Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going back into history and into a land that is unfriendly to churches. See, they're putting people in prison for their beliefs, and this is a game about influence and deduction. We're going to look at Unauthorized today from Kara Games. It's for 6 to 12 players and it's on Kickstarter right now. Let me show you what's played and I'll see you on the other side. Now in this game, you're going to be given a role card. You're either going to be a police person up there in red. You're going to be possibly a pastor in green in the upper right. Or you might be one of the many neutral roles that you see there on the bottom. Now each of these roles are double-sided, male on one side, female on the other. So let's look at the other sides. So here we have the opposite gender of each of these roles. Each of them will have a special ability that you'll be able to use. But essentially these are the three different sides, if you will, that you can be on as the game starts. Now at the beginning of the game, you'll be getting a role face up just like this. So this is a 6-player game, for example. There'll be one player that is a pastor, and the green is the church side, the red is the state side, and all the blues are neutral. So over the course of the game, these blue types of roles will be changing between red state and green church. And so what happens is the church is trying to have a majority of the people green by the end of the game and making sure at least one person is not in prison, where the state is trying to either be equal or if they don't have a majority, have everybody in the church in prison. Now at the beginning of the game, the church or church members will all get 7 cards randomly that are all green. Now these would be secret, you wouldn't see them, but I'm showing you them here just so you can see what they look like. And anybody on the state side at the beginning of the game will get 7 red state experience cards. The neutral players will get a random mix of green and red cards. Some of the cards actually are both, depending on which side you hold it will be the card. Red's face up here, so this would be a red card. If I flipped it the other way, it would be a green card. Loyalty is very important in this game. The green church players, again, are trying to have a majority, have at least one person not in prison, and the state, the red team, is trying to either have a tie or majority, or have everybody in church in prison at the end of the game. So everything they do, they're always going to either stay as green church or red state. Now the loyalty of the neutral players can change throughout the game like this. These are the cards that are out in front, face up from this role player. These cards are actually secretly in this player's hand, but I'm showing you them here. We would count up the amount of red. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we count up the amount of greens. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's tied. If it's tied or the majority is red, this player is on the state side. However, this card could have been played earlier like this, and now it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green to 1, 2, 3 red. In this case, this player is on the church side. Even more differently, if this was out here, this card can actually be changed in their hand to be either way at any time in the game, and they can change their, it might possibly change their loyalty there as well, secretly. So these wild cards, if they're in their hand, can change their loyalty during the game, but once they're placed face up, they're not changed. The game is played over 4 rounds, each including 3 different phases. In the first phase, players will be playing cards. During the first round of this, everybody will play simultaneously 2 cards face up in front of them. Then we'll go to player turns. One of the things you can do is use your role power. So for example, if this player did their role power, they could swap one card with another player. Both players choose which card. Or maybe if it was a different neutral player, you could draw a card, look at it, and give it to the player of choice. Now the police have different roles, or the state side of things. The police roles say, hey, choose one player. If it's a pastor, you imprison them. If not, they must either play 2 red cards or they go to prison. If you're a pastor role, you can discard any face-up red card or wild card played as a red card in front of any player. And then you can influence anybody even if you're imprisoned. Now these actions started with the dealer and went clockwise, but I'm just showing you the different actions. Here is speak to a neighbor. You can look at either one of your neighbors and tell them to show you all their secret experience cards in their hand. Now prison is important because, as I mentioned, if all the church members are imprisoned, they're going to lose the game regardless. If someone's imprisoned, they place their character sideways to show that. Now, one of the actions you can do on your turn is you can seek parole. If this is the case, you would draw the top card off the draw deck of experience and you have to play it. If it is a red card, they get released and they would turn themselves up. If it's a green card, they would stay there. If a pastor's imprisoned, they must get rid of all of the green experience cards out of their hand before they even try to see if they get out. In this case, they didn't. The last possible action you can take is conducting a public execution. It can only be done by a police roll, and it can only be done once per game. Let's say they selected this player, they would take all the cards that are in their hand and put them in front of them. Then we'd look to see if this player was loyal to the church. If so, this player could select any 2 players, and each of them have to discard 1 face-up red state card that's in front of them. This player is executed, is out of the game for the rest of the game, and does not count towards loyalty to either side at endgame scoring. Now, after everyone has taken their action, we would then pass this dealer card to the left a certain amount of spots depending on the amount of players. Now, each round we do different things. So at the first round we didn't pass any cards, we just played 2 simultaneously. Over the next few rounds, you'll be passing 1 card to the left, then playing a card. The next round you'll be passing 1 card to the right, then playing a card. And the last one you'll be passing 1 card to anybody and then playing a card. At any point in time, if you have less than 2 cards, basically you can draw back up to 2. So again, you're doing this card actions, and then everyone is picking one of these actions, and then we are changing the dealer for the 4 rounds. At the end, again, we'll be checking everyone to see what loyalty they are. If it's majority of church and at least 1 player is not imprisoned, they win. Otherwise, the state will win. And here are some of the other rules that I hadn't shown yet. The matchmaker can choose 2 players, you can be one of them, and the first player gives a card to the second player. The musician can choose a player and name a loyalty, and that player has to play a matching card or a wild set of that loyalty. If they can't, that player draws a card. The rebel plays a card from the hand and onto any player's face-up pile, so they're influencing somebody else. Select and discard any face-up card from any player, or if not in prison, release 1 player from prison, and this is the clerk. The thief randomly takes 1 card from a player's hand and places it in their own hand. Or the counselor select a player, and that player must discard 1 of their choice from their hand. Alright, well there's Unauthorized. Now this is unlike a typical social deduction game where a lot of things are hearsay and it's all about above the table and lying and this and that, where this actually has a lot more to it because there's a lot of card play that really is the main crux of the game. Sure, you each get those special rolls at the beginning of the game and you know which side you're on, at least the pastors and the police do, but the neutrals is cool because you get to kind of decide as the game goes on and as you're playing as to which side you're going to be trying to be with. So I find that interesting that you're using special rolls, you're trying to influence other people's hands, you're doing all sorts of things to try to influence it to try to be on the right team at the right time at the end of the game. You know, the people, it's very thematic, it's very historical, where you're trying to be the majority if they're a church and make sure not everybody's in jail or the state wins. So very, very thematic there. But it's carried out through that card play, sort of reverse drafting cards and things like that. So if you like where you have a little bit more control than a typical social deduction game, but still have sort of that deduction aspect, and where you're trying to influence people with cards, then this is going to be one you might want to check out. Right now it's on Kickstarter below from Cara Games, and you can click the link below here and go right to the Kickstarter page, and I'm sure they'd love your support.